What's up, my name's Samuel Leeds. I'm a property investor. I've been investing in property now for over a decade, and every single week I always introduce you to one of my success students who's become financially free by investing in property. And often these people have been in the game for like 6 months, sometimes even less, and people think, how on earth have they become financially free so quickly? But here's the thing, it can sometimes take a little bit of time. So I'm going to introduce you in a moment to Nicole Black, and Nicola is on the Property Investors Academy, and it took her 2 years to become financially independent. Now she's quit her full-time job and she's doing property full-time, but she's even systemized the property business, so she's spending time now on health and doing what she really feels passionate about and loves. So you're going to learn a whole bunch of nuggets from this interview. Listen, take good notes. Also, if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe, smash the like button. I look forward to you enjoying this interview. Let me know your comments in the comment section below. So this is the first Winners Wednesday that I've ever done in this neck of the woods. I've come to you. Normally people come to me.
Thank you.
And you are very far away from my house. But I'm here. What did you think of my house that we just looked at?
It needs a bit of work.
You saw my worst house ever. And I tried to sell it to you, but you were not buying it because you've been taught well. Nicola, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much. It's been a long time coming. Why don't you just give us a little bit of backstory as to when we met, what you were doing, what life was like?
Right, so I guess the journey started when I first discovered your book on Amazon, Buy Low, Rent High. Read it. At the time I was working in the corporate world, working for EE. I'd been there probably about 15 years at the time. Had a very good job, very secure. But I read your book and something clicked, something changed that made me kind of question whether or not that was the future I wanted to continue to follow, and it just gave me a kind of different way of thinking. I've always been into property, I've developed a lot of my own houses, but I never considered I could actually do it and make money from it. So that was probably the catalyst, your book.
So prior to that then, you say you've always been into property. So do you mean properties that you'd lived in?
My own properties.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd bought a property and you'd kind of like fixed it up.
Yeah, it was just a little hobby.
So
I enjoyed doing it, yeah.
But then you read my book, and what was it that you questioned? You say that you started looking at things a little bit differently.
Just this, I don't think I'd ever really considered that you could actually make a full-time living out of property that easily.
Yeah.
I only knew probably the traditional ways of, buy a property, renovate it, sell it on. Yeah. And you just opened my eyes up to lots of different strategies and clever ways of kind of no money down deals and serviced accommodation, HMOs, and it just something really clicked inside and got me quite excited.
And you had a good job and you liked your job.
Yeah.
You at the same time as coming across my book and seeing my YouTube videos, I know you had an experience, you did a little bit of travelling. Tell me about that.
Yes, it probably coincided. I think I read your book just before Christmas, a couple of years back, and then in the April following, I took a sabbatical from work for a couple of months and went travelling around Cambodia on my own. So it was quite a brave move, but it just gave me a lot of time to think and reflect out there. Done some volunteering in a school in Cambodia, spent a lot of time with families and children there, and it just massively opened my eyes up to, I guess, just different ways of living, and I really questioned where true happiness comes from.
Yeah, sure.
So I came back with just a bit of a different outlook on life and what was important, and all the kind of material things I had built up and the very good corporate role. I started to question and started to really think, is this the future that you want for yourself? So I think between those two, that was probably the big turning point in my life.
And you were working as a director for BT, so you had a good job, a high paid job, and when you went out and did travelling, you said that you met people that had nothing, but you felt that they were happy.
Yeah.
And you went out trying to impact them and help them, and you thought, actually, these guys are really happy, and you almost came back, impacted yourself, which is, I can relate to that on so many levels. And that's probably why when we first met at the crash course, there was a connection there right from the beginning.
Yeah, I remember in that crash course, that was was it about May, June time? And I just remember towards the end, you got up and your values really shone through, and that just resonated with me so much. I thought, you're not in it just purely for the money. There's a lot more to you beneath the surface, and I thought I could definitely see me kind of working closer and getting a lot from your membership.
And we've been working together now for the last couple of years, and you can see, you know more than anyone, I'm a trainer because of my mission and passion more than anything else. So
can I just stop you there? Because one thing that sticks in my mind, I don't know if you still do this, but on the crash course at the time, you handed out a yellow sheet of paper.
Yep,
Can you remember that? You still do that?
We do.
Yeah, right. And that's where you basically kind of had all your values there. And that's stuck with me ever since. Not all of them, I've changed them to suit me, but there's a couple of yours in there. I still recite them every day.
Yeah.
So
it's about purpose and mission rather than just money. Yeah. So you're working, money's not an issue because you've got a good paid job, but what was it that you really wanted then? Why did you come to the crash course? Why did you go on to do further training? What was the strongest reason why?
There's probably a couple of reasons. One was I had a genuine interest in property, and I'd actually at that point moved house 9 times. And I thought, unless I channel this interest somewhere else, I'll keep moving house for the rest of my life, just to fulfill that kind of creative side. So that was one. I thought, actually, I can maybe make some money while enjoying what I do. But the other one was that kind of passive income, the freedom to one day hopefully build up enough wealth to give back, and have that time freedom to be doing other things and to volunteer your time and to travel more. So there's kind of 2 sides.
And now as well, and we're going to go through the story of how it happened, but you have quit your job.
Yep.
So you're now full-time, maybe not even full-time in property, but you've got an income coming in from property, and now you're spending your time focusing on doing what you love doing, which is helping people, health, which we'll get to. Talk me through your first deal. In fact, your very first deal was one that I was very opposed to, if you remember.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
Yeah, and we still argue about this to this day. Tell me about that.
So this is a property. So I'd saved up a lot of money, and I decided I needed to buy a property in Spain.
Yeah. Just because Spain's nice, right?
Just because, and listen, one day that is part of my plan, is to have passive income so I can actually spend a couple of months of the year out in Spain. Yeah. So there is a bit of a long-term strategy there.
You're still debating me now. you know you're wrong.
It wasn't the most sensible financial decision I've ever made.
And you were about to buy it just when we met.
Yeah, just as I joined the academy.
Okay, sure. When we first started talking one-on-one. Yeah.
But I think by that point I'd probably already invested a fair bit in fees and all the rest of it. So I did put a big deposit down.
Sure.
There's a lot more fees involved when you buy in Spain.
Yes.
So there's quite a lot of tax. So basically that purchase went ahead. I now have a property in Spain, but I could have, had I have listened to your advice, I could have been financially free probably a lot quicker with that money.
Yeah. And you know what though, and I said this to you at the time, I said, I'm not saying it's a terrible thing and you're an idiot to do that. It's just not the smartest from a commercial, financial viewpoint. And I told you that at the time, but I think you'd kind of already committed. So you went ahead and bought the property in Spain. Is it doing okay?
It's not quite paying for itself yet, but I only started, I mean, it was for me personally, but then I did start renting it out probably last summer. So I've never had a full summer of it yet, and obviously the lockdown situation.
But then you get me back by saying, but Samuel, you bought a Range Rover.
Exactly.
So not every single investment has to be commercially savvy. You can do things, and this is what I said to you. I said, if you really want to do it, if it's really going to make you happy, then do it. But it's just not a good investment property. So you did that, which didn't leave you with money.
Not a lot.
So you weren't really left with much money at all at that point, maybe a few thousand. So what happened next? Talk me through that deal, the property that you refinanced. Talk me, because that was such an incredible property deal.
That was a few. The very first one was a rent to SA. That was what, with very little funds, I thought actually that's something I can do. So about 2 months after joining the academy, got the first rent to SA deal. that was on city centre location in Newcastle. Unfortunately, didn't work out. It was in a apartment block, and the management company decided they were no longer going to allow SAs.
Yeah, shame, but it happens.
So yeah, it wasn't really a success in terms of the finances. I did lose money. I questioned at that point whether it was right to carry on, but I did, and I learned a lot from it, like a lot. So the next step of the journey, I done very different. So kind of took all those learnings into place. So after that was the first purchase. So partnered up with somebody who already had a few properties, and together we put the finances together to buy our first BRRR. So we bought in our local area. It was a 1-bed flat, but it had the most humongous bathroom you've ever seen. Yeah. So it was just obvious for a 2-bed conversion. Yeah. So we bought that for 45,000. Got a good deal. Spent in total about 18,000 on it. 18.
So far we're about 63,000.
Yeah. It needed a lot of damp proofing throughout, so it was about 5,000 on the damp proofing. Yeah. And included in that figure was actually my end goal was to turn it into a serviced accommodation apartment.
So you wanted to get it really high end.
So I wanted good spec, and included in that figure was all the furnishing as well. Okay. So if you deduct that and the damp proofing, it was probably about 10 grand on the actual refurb. Yeah. So, so we'd done that. That got revalued this year, just in February, and it got revalued at 90,000.
That's really good.
So I was really pleased with that.
I bet you were over the moon.
Yeah. So we pulled out
all your money.
All the money back out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And also that property, as it's a serviced accommodation, what are the mortgage payments on that?
About just over 300.
300, is that interest only?
Yeah.
And how much are you making on that? What are you renting, or what's the turnover on that?
Well, it only went live a few weeks before the lockdown, so I'm only just starting to...
Which we're going to get to, because when you quit your job and then it was like the moment.
But that one on its own, I'm hoping we'll average about 700 or 800 profit per month.
A profit per month? So the turnover on that will be how much?
I don't have a calculator.
But all you care about is profit, which is good, because turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. Profit first. Love that. Great. So, okay. So that property is going to give you, after all your costs, after your mortgage payments, it's going to give you a profit of around about £700 to £800 a month. Plus, it was a no money down deal. Because you bought it and you pulled out all your initial money. That's like the dream case study of a property. Yeah.
And I always had an exit plan. If the SA didn't work, it's a really good rental area. So standard buy-to-let would probably make us about 200 a month.
Great. So even if it's an SA it doesn't work, you're still going to be making profit. It was still no money down deal. And the thing is with people like you, I shouldn't say that.
I don't know where this is going.
But it's this. You've always had the property bug, right? You love property. But the thing is, without the financial savviness and the education, what can happen is you can end up doing property deals that are fun and exciting, but don't really make any money. And that's where I found you were at when we first met. I thought this person, wonderful person, great heart, wants to do a lot of good for people and help people, working crazy hours and everything. But what you're going to do is you're going to save up money and you're going to dump it into a property and you're going to do some fun stuff with it. It's going to get the itch, the property itch, but it's not going to give you any financial freedom. It's not going to give you any passive income. But what you've done now is you're now a bit much smarter investor. So you're doing things, but you're making a good income from it. So that property, you then went and got a couple more?
Yes, so have 2 rent-to-rent deals, all in the same area. That was one of the kind of strategies I took after the Quayside, the Newcastle city centre one didn't work out, is to actually set it up closer to home. Yeah. So all 3 of them are now within about 15-minute drive, and that works for me to be able to manage them.
And in a fabulous location, aren't they?
Yes, so they're all coastal properties in the northeast. Yeah. And it's a great area for families, tourists, so it works really well from a serviced accommodation perspective. I didn't think it would initially. It was a bit of a test. Yeah. But we come on to that in a second, but kind of post-lockdown, it's really started to pay off.
And do you think as well that rent to rent is a good strategy. I mean, you're somebody who was in a high-paid job. You did have some money. You just invested into a property in Spain. Why did you choose rent to rent as a strategy?
Initially because of the minimum amount of money down.
Yeah.
So it is just the refurb costs. So it meant I could get that momentum going quickly without any major kind of funds behind us. So I would absolutely advocate it. If you're starting out, that is by far the way to go. As long as you've got a good agreement in place and you get all the terms that are right for you, I think that's important. But I must admit, longer term, it's to build up my own property portfolio because you have the capital appreciation benefits to go with it as well. So
basically, rent to rent is a great way to get cash flow, but if you want to build wealth, you kind of want to be investing in your own properties. I think that's really good. So let's talk about the situation then when you got to a point where you had a few rent to rent properties, everything's fantastic, and you thought, you know what, I can now quit my job. Talk to me about how that happened, and then the holy moly moment when you just quit your job, your big earning job is now finished, you're relying on rent to serviced accommodation properties and some savings from the refinance, which is great, but then suddenly lockdown comes. Tell me through that whole moment, because it was an interesting moment and we spoke quite a bit about it.
Yeah. So I hadn't at that point, if I go back to, well, it was before, I made the decision before, probably around back end of last year. And at that point, I wasn't covering my outgoings through property, but I had enough confidence and belief that I was on the right journey. And by taking the leap out of that secure corporate job would actually free up the time to accelerate that. So I kind of, at that point, through everything I'd learned and all the support I had, I felt confident enough to make that leap. So made the leap at the end of February. 3 weeks later, somebody had decided to announce a bit of a lockdown.
Yes.
And with all of my eggs in a serviced accommodation kind of tourist market basket, things just ground to a big halt overnight. So thankfully I had some savings, but it was a kind of oh shit type of what do I do now? But do you know what though? It didn't take as long, I think, to kind of pull myself out of that situation. There's no point in being in a kind of negative spiral. It gets, where it was out of anyone's control. Yeah. So I just kind of looked ahead to what I'd built up and what the future would hold, knowing fairly confidently it would come back and it would bounce back. And thankfully, it has. And being in a coastal area, in a kind of touristy town with 3 serviced accommodations is actually really starting to pay off now.
And also through that lockdown period, I mean, you weren't losing money, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're actually losing money. Yeah. Wow. So you were really hit hard.
Well, believe it or not, one property was live, had been all of last year, and that one was doing okay because it had reviews and it had, so I did still have some kind of key workers in over the period. Yeah. The other one had just gone live in February, so that was very new. And the other one went live the day the lockdown was announced, pretty much.
So it was the worst time.
2 of them were empty for 3 months.
That is terrible.
So there was all the outgoings, all the bills still needed to be paid.
And I remember phoning you up because I knew that you were going to quit your job. And that was always kind of the plan, I think. And then in February you quit. And in February, there was a little bit of talk about Corona, but it was mostly in China. Yeah. No one would have known.
No, I would have probably
No one would have known that Corona was going to come so badly into this country that we'd have... It just wasn't... It wasn't part of anybody's plan at all. And you quit your job in February, and then I remember the following month, Corona really kicked off, and then the lockdown happened. And I remember just feeling awful because I thought, you're such a kind person that's coming from such a good place. You've worked hard, you've built up these few properties, and yes, you've managed to pull your money back out of this deal. So I knew you weren't strapped or anything like that, which is fine. But I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, one of my academy members has just quit their job based on their service accommodation business, and now lockdowns happened, and I reached out and we spoke. Yeah. and you were really sweet and positive, and I thought you might be kind of annoyed almost with me, like, oh, I've just quit and you told me to do this. So I was thinking I need to talk to you, but you were really calm about it and said exactly what you're saying now, which is, look, I'm not going to focus on the negative. I know we're going to get through it, and so that was really, really, really good. But now things have taken a massive positive turn. How much profit now then? Not talking of previously, but what sort of profit? I know it's hard to say because until with service accommodation it varies every month. But what kind of profit are you making right now as we speak?
So July was a little bit of a slow start, but ended really strong, and we've got the 3 properties are close to 85-90% occupied throughout August. Yeah. So if I use, August is going to be best case scenario. We know that it's kind of seasonal peak, but that would bring in probably in the region of about 5,000 profit per month. But average,
so a good month, you're probably talking $5,000.
Yeah, average.
Okay, and that's profit.
Yeah,
which is actually really good.
Yeah,
and although that's not as much as your job was paying you, it's still, between £3,000 and £5,000 a month from 3 rent-to-rent properties. That's really good.
It's and
especially as one of them you own, and you've got all the capital appreciation with it as well. What would your advice be to somebody wanting to go and get a rent-to-rent? Because presumably now is not a bad time, because assuming it's in the right area and it's the right property, how would you go about approaching the landlords? What would be the advice that you'd give?
So the first one I got was direct from an agent, letting agent. Yeah. And that went really well. And I think the reason behind that, it's the strength of the relationship we have with them. So spend some time actually going to meet them face to face, get to understand the type of... So I approached a company who are a local company. It was a family-run business. And I had a good idea already of what I was looking for. So it was very much kind of, I'll help you, you help me type of relationship. And we became quite good friends throughout it as well. So she was always looking out for me, for other properties that come along. So I think if you can just get on that, find someone where you've got that rapport with, they'll do a lot of the hard work and the groundwork for you.
So important. I always say a good relationship is better than a good deal. Yeah. Because if you've got good relationships with agents and landlords, you're right, they'll do a lot of the hard work for you. What's life like now then? How does it feel to be, I know we've just kind of still coming out of lockdown, but what's it like to not have a job to go to?
I always knew I wanted time freedom, I guess. But actually having it, the reality of it is so much better. Just being able to wake up on a morning and plan your own day and choose what you do and when you want to do it. And it's given me the time to set up another business I've been looking to do. It's been a bit of a hobby, but it's completely different in the well-being space. So that's the type of thing I envisaged when I set off on this journey. Yes, I'm doing property because I love doing property, but it's given us time freedom to start doing some of the other things that I'm so passionate about that I just could never have done in a corporate job. So it is hard and it is tough. There's lots that goes on behind the scenes of running your own business, but it definitely all pays off. So. Yeah,
well, you've worked really hard and it's now paying off because you're now living life on your terms, which is awesome. What was it like? Talk to me a little bit about the training, because I know you went through some very advanced training. What was that like? How did that help? What was the experience?
You know what? I can say this, and I know a lot of people say this, but this is genuine. I would not be sitting here today with this story to tell had it not been for that training. It's as simple as that. Because I might have read a book, but like you said earlier, I didn't have the strategy of how you actually take some ideas and actually turn it into a business. I think that's what was missing. So that training, it opens your eyes up to different and new ways of doing things. It gives you the tools and the techniques that you need. But I think even more importantly than that, it gives you the network of people and the support and your kind of mentorship, all the podcasts that you put out, all your Winners on a Wednesdays videos, the Facebook group. So it it's a collective behind the scenes effort, if that makes sense. So I think that access to the network it gives you and the training, like I say, I would not be sitting here. Simple as that.
And that's great. And that's part of my mission. You know, like in the same way that you love, now you're spending your time on helping people with their well-being and things like that because you love doing that. This is what I love doing. I love sitting and with people like you. And even though you're on the other side, so you've part of the academy, doing the trainings, coming to the dinners, you also watch most of the Winners Wednesday videos.
Yeah, that's been my inspiration throughout this, because I mean, I live in the northeast, so I've got down to as many training courses as I can, but when I can't get to them, I need to keep a hand in on what's going on, and that was my way of doing it. So Winners on a Wednesday Without Fail, a lot of your podcast, Alistair and Russell's podcasts, it just, every time you listen to it, you'll pick up another little nugget. And it just keeps you inspired, and it keeps, well, for me, it kept the belief that I could do it. Seeing other people do it around you, whenever you've got any self-doubt, watch one of those videos and I'm back on it again. So.
Do you think, I mean, I always say, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't go on to succeed is because they don't have the correct education, and that's why I teach. I think another reason as well is also sometimes people don't have the belief and they don't have the right mindset. How important do you think having a positive mindset and a belief in yourself, in the system, how important is that in succeeding in business?
I can't express how important it is. You need to learn the practical side, obviously, but if you've just got that and nothing else, well, for me personally, that wouldn't be enough. I would feel the mindset is where you make or break, and I'm starting to understand that even more now, and I'm only partway through the journey. You've got to have belief in yourself. You've got to, for me, understanding why I'm doing it and having those goals is what kept me going when it got really tough. And kind of investing in yourself every day. So listening to I've read a lot of the books you recommended. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I had never even heard of before I kind of came across you. So books like that, and I'll listen to those every single morning for a good 20 minutes, half an hour when I'm getting ready, just to make sure your mind stays in that.
So interesting. Space. Like your story, you've now got rent-to-rent properties that you've put very little money down, making £3,000 to £5,000 a month. You've quit your job. It's an incredible story, but it could have so easily been a disaster story. Not just with the lockdown, but prior to that. So there's so many times, and when I look at I can see two people, and they have the same training. They have the same. One of them goes off to succeed. One of them doesn't. But the only difference is when one person had a negative hurdle, they focused in on it and let it. They talked themselves out of it and started dwelling in on the negative and focusing on the problems and blaming people. Whereas the other group of people, such as yourself, say, yeah, of course there's problems. There's always problems. And you can always find negativity. If you look for negativity, you're going to find it. But if you look for solutions and positivity, you're going to find that as well. So when you had your... you said that the first property in Newcastle didn't work out.
City centre one,
so you could have just said, it didn't work out. Therefore, the training doesn't work. Samuel's not legit. He makes it all too easy, and this, that. And you could have gone down that mindset, which a lot of people do. Or you could say, it didn't work, but that's normal. Because actually, what did I learn? And actually part of the teaching is to go for no and fail your way to success. So yes, it didn't work out, but how can I now use that as a stepping stone to get success? And I think that the difference between having a problem or a failure and using it as a stepping stone to success, and then just starting blaming or blaming yourself. Oh yeah, because some people watch Winners Wednesday and they find it depressing because they go, all these people succeeding, but not me. Whereas if you say, actually, I'm going to be inspired by it, and I think that's so important. What do you think?
I 100% agree. I'm a lover of quotes and phrases, but the one that sticks in my mind there is obstacles are what you see when you lose track of your goal. And I think that's true, because there's so many things that will get in your way and obstacles that will come. But if you allow them to, they'll stop you. You've just got to keep focused on where you're going and why you're doing it, and you'll find a way around it.
Because I'm sure when you did the training, I'm sure there was some people, you did the same training as Anthony.
Yeah, we were on the DFE together.
On the DFE?
Yeah.
He's gone on to do ridiculous things, extremely successful. And then I'm sure there were some other people that didn't do anything. And then there's you who's done well. What advice would you give to somebody? How do you get that determination and that positivity? Is it a choice, or is there a secret behind it to be able to just keep going to then succeed and not quit?
Probably two things come to mind. The first one is, in the beginning, when I first joined the course, I think I'm quite impatient. So I kind of wanted it all to happen just now, and I went a million miles an hour at it in all sorts of different directions. And then I kind of realised you're running yourself into the ground, for one, but you're following other people's path, you're following other people, you're seeing what other people are doing and trying to copy it. Yeah. So I think I took a step back and thought, wait a minute, figure out what's right for you, find out what your strategy is, which you would, I think in one of our sessions, you would recommended, look, it's essays, it's 3, stick to that. Yeah. So I did, and once you know what your strategy is, keep clear on that, because there's so many things that can take you off down different paths, but you'll just drift. Yeah. So I think get a clear strategy and have confidence in following your own path. Yeah. Don't try and copy somebody else's. Yeah. I think is...
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, I mean, we do on the academy. We get people to work out their business plan, because if you're going into any business, you need a business plan for yourself. You can't, if you want to set up a franchise, you can't look at McDonald's and then look at this and all these different, it's like, well, actually, what's your business? And I think in property, sometimes people, I want to do lease options and rent to rents, and this person did it in Sheffield. I saw Samuel did an FF challenge in Sheffield. I'll go to Sheffield, and you're right, and you can end up becoming frantically flustered. And another thing you said that's so important as well is almost that tension between patience, because this is not going to happen really, really fast. It might do if you happen to be very, very lucky, or like me, when I do my financial freedom challenges, I've already got the knowledge and the experience. So sure, I can go and make it happen really fast. But when you're starting this journey, don't think of this as a 12-day or even a 12-week thing. Think of this as a 12-month plan, or even a 2 or 3 year plan. I mean, you've been now going for a couple of years. But most people, if I said to someone, how would you feel if in 2 years' time you're making £3,000 to £5,000 a month in recurring income from property? They'd go, I'd be over the moon, life-changing. Okay, well, why do you get so upset when it doesn't happen in 3 weeks? You know, be a bit patient, but then at the same time, yes, go hard. Yes, put the energy in it. You need massive action, but you need a little bit of patience, because when you go to university, you spend 12 months at uni, or 2 years. You don't expect results until you finish training. And then you finish training, and then you expect to start getting results. But I think sometimes when people expect, they go to a crash course and they expect to suddenly walk out of the room financially free. And it's like, no, you're going to get the tools, and then you're going to implement them, and sure, you can go into advanced training and you can work on them, but think of this as a 12-month thing, not a 12-day
thing. Like you're in training.
Yeah.
Like you say, the university, you don't go to university and expect to be a doctor in 3 months' time. Yeah. You've got to put the effort in to get there. So that's kind of where I've been over it. Could have maybe happened faster, but looking back, I don't think it needed to. I think it happened at the pace that was right for me. Yeah. And it became easier when I took the pressure off myself for having to, you've got to do this next week, you've got to do it. Yeah. And that's when it became easier. But I would say the other thing, which is really important, I mentioned earlier, is to keep your mind, for me, to keep my mindset in the right place, that has to be a daily investment in yourself. Mm-hmm. So I've got quite an interesting morning routine, but I'll get up really, really early, and the first couple of hours on a morning, I will meditate, I will read some kind of inspiring book, I'll journal, there's lots of things I'll do just to set the day off in the right way. And I think if you don't, that's when you start drifting and doubting, and just surround yourself with like-minded people. And I think for me that has to become a habit. You have to do that every single day to
Did you make friends on the academy?
Yeah. Leah and Cheryl.
And they've also been on Winners Wednesday?
Obviously Anthony, and even through the Facebook network we've got there as well. So I had a chat with Piers a couple of months back, and we shared some kind of learning.
He's also been on Winners Wednesday.
Yeah. So it's a great little community.
It's great as well. Do you remember the dinner that we had last year?
Yeah.
That was so good, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a beautiful venue.
Yeah, but it's just so nice and that wasn't only Academy members dinner, and it's like just looking around the table, it's like that person's financially free, that person's financially free, that person's financially free, that person's not quite, but they've got 2 properties and it's just like, I think when you're surrounded by people who are winning and successful and making money in property, but also rooting for one another and care about one another, I think that kind of positive peer pressure and support, for me, I think is absolutely, I know I wouldn't be where I am without people just around me believing in me, rooting for me. You're the makeup of the people that you spend time with. Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree with it. I remember you said that way back when, and that stuck with us. That is it. Your 5 closest.
Yeah. The 5 people you spend the most time with is the makeup of who you are.
Yeah.
So if your 5 closest friends are all broke, negative, whinging about life, complaining, then you're going to be the 6th.
It will rub off on you.
You'll be the 6th. Whereas if you've got 5 friends and they're all financially independent in property and they love life and they're positive, you're going to be the 6th. Yeah. That's just how it's going to be.
Definitely. And you've just got to just become a little bit more conscious of that. It's not to say you don't spend time with the other people, but you just make sure you've got like the right balance of where you're spending your time. But and I think just being around people in that environment, hearing their stories makes you believe even more that you can do it. Because you realise we're all just normal people at the end of the day. Yeah. If they've done it, then surely I can do it too.
And I think as well what you've said, because you live very far away. I know, because we're here now, which is where we're in Durham.
Just on the outskirts of Durham.
On the outskirts of Durham, and I think as well online, the power of online is so good, and that's something we've been talking about earlier over breakfast. Is just how great it is to be able to utilise online communities as well. And I think that 100 years ago we had probably horses, no cars, no planes, no mobile phones, no internet. Now we're so privileged to be able to drive and to be able to pick up the phone and be able to join an online group. I think we need to maximise that. We're very, very privileged, which is great. I think it's a good opportunity. It's a good time to do business. What would be your kind of final words of advice to people listening, people that are thinking maybe they're in a job and they're thinking of getting into property? What would you say to them?
Do it would be the obvious one, but understand why you want to do it. Make sure you've got some clear kind of visions and goals behind why, because it will get tough at times, but if that passion and desire is strong enough and you invest in yourself through training, through networks, through mentorship, then it will happen. And one of my another read, but that really resonated with me, is the power of consistency. So small steps every day, no matter what it is, really, as long as you keep that up consistently, you will get to where you want to get to. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, you just have that belief and it will happen. Yeah,
that's great. Well, I'm sure you'll have inspired a lot of people from this story. I know you don't really get anything from coming on here apart from just to sit and share your story, but that's really what this is about. It's to just help other people. I have loved working with you over the last couple years, and hopefully you have too.
Yeah, honestly, I know I said it earlier, but I genuinely can't thank you enough for just your words of wisdom, the support that you gave, and I know you do it from a good place as well. And like I said, I wouldn't be sitting here.
I really appreciate that, and it's an absolute honour to have been able to work with you and to see you continue to flourish as you grow your business and you grow your portfolio and you help a lot of people in health. So thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens over the next few months and years.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I think you would agree that Nicola is just a fantastic person and deserves every success that she's got. If you want to see more interviews, it's really interesting because every week I interview someone from a different background, different walk of life. So if you want to see the whole playlist of winners on a Wednesday, you can check that out right here. Also, please don't forget to subscribe, turn the notification bell on. You can do that right here, and drop a comment, some support and some encouragement for Nicola. I'm sure she'll read the comments. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.